She told the world it was coconut oil. Coconut oil on her hair, on her skin, in her cooking. A whole wellness mythology built around one kitchen staple and sold to millions of followers as the real explanation behind her glow. Meanwhile, a plastic surgeon sat down with 30 years of her photos and had a very different read on what was actually happening to her face. Something changed, and it wasn't the lighting. Welcome to the Star Report, where today we're going feature by feature, year by year, through every transformation that natural apparently couldn't explain. The brand she sold. Before the receipts come out, the setup matters. Because the thing about Meghan Markle's natural narrative was that it wasn't offhand or incidental, it was architectural. Every piece of her public identity, her lifestyle blog, her wellness brand, her Netflix content, the way her team spoke about her to press, orbited the same central claim. This woman was the real thing. Her representatives went on record about her love of coconut oil as though it were the entire skincare cabinet. Hydrated skin, coconut oil in the hair, coconut oil in the food. A lifestyle so frictionless and uncurated, it basically sold itself. The consistency of it was the point. It wasn't just a brand preference. It was positioned as a value system, proof that the version of Meghan Markle the public was seeing was the unfiltered one. No artifice, no heavy intervention, just her.
Meghan loves to talk about natural everything, natural remedies, natural lifestyle, natural brand image. That's the whole vibe she sells. But at the same time, she may have had a little help from modern beauty treatments. She can do whatever she thinks helps her feel more confident. But the thing is, she pushes the all-natural narrative so strongly while possibly benefiting from very non-natural enhancements. You can't build a brand around simplicity and purity and then keep things vague when it comes to your own routine.
She pushed the all-natural narrative strongly while possibly benefiting from some very non-natural enhancements. And then came the line that stayed. You can't build a brand around simplicity and purity and then keep things deliberately vague when it comes to your own routine. The word possibly was doing a lot of diplomatic work in that sentence, because the photos told a far more specific story, and to understand how far that story traveled, you had to start at the actual beginning, the actual baseline. As a teenager, Meghan Markle had a strong genetic foundation, the natural curls, the youthful fullness beneath the brows, a broader nasal base with some cartilage convexity at the tip, a short philtrum with good lip fullness, and well-defined philtrum columns that he specifically noted as a feature you're either born with or not, something surgery and fillers cannot convincingly replicate. She had a strong chin, sharp Cupid's bow definition, and a heart-shaped face with a solid cheekbone and jaw structure. None of that was manufactured. She inherited a lot of it from her mother, the bone structure, the slightly upturned eyes, the curls. Her father contributed to a balanced facial structure that by her teens had already made her recognizable as photogenic, which in Hollywood translates to, the camera already liked her face without being asked to. That was the context. Her baseline was genuinely good, and that actually made the transformation more interesting, not less, because what followed wasn't a glow-up from difficult starting material. It was a series of refinements applied to an already strong foundation. The kind of adjustments the industry rewards not because they're necessary, but because Hollywood has a very specific idea of what camera perfect looks like, and natural is rarely in that brief. The first visible change came before she was anywhere close to Hollywood, and it wasn't surgical. The hair switch. Around the age of 16 or 17, Meghan stopped wearing her hair the way it grew. Her naturally curly, voluminous hair gave her a warmth and visual personality that was entirely her own. The moment she began straightening it, the whole read of her face shifted, more polished, more controlled, more aligned with what the entertainment industry considered acceptable for an aspiring actress. The commentary was straightforward about it. The straightened hair created a sleeker, more camera-ready image. The natural curls gave her a youthful, vibrant quality. The straight hair gave her a professional one. And while hair isn't a procedure, it was the earliest visible sign of a pattern that would define the next 3 decades. Meghan was paying close attention to what the industry rewarded, and she was quietly adjusting herself to meet it. What made the choice significant wasn't the act itself. Millions of women straighten their hair. What was significant was what it signaled about the operating logic. The natural version of herself was something to be managed toward a more controlled output, not something to lead with. That instinct, calibrated and early, set the tone for everything that came after. The curls wouldn't come back in any meaningful way for a long time, and by the time they did, several other changes were already on the timeline. The gap closes. As a younger woman, Meghan had a diastema, a visible gap between her front teeth. In some industries, it reads as charming, even distinctive. In Hollywood, it reads as an item on a to-do list. The gap closed. The source commentary acknowledged that some people floated natural development as an explanation, but the more straightforward read, given the precision of the result and the industry context it happened in, was cosmetic dental intervention. Bonding or veneers, most likely.
The more realistic explanation is cosmetic intervention, especially given the importance of a perfect smile in the entertainment industry.
I mean, the easiest one is to talk about teeth. When she was younger, she had gaps, and now she's got beautiful teeth, and that helps her give us all a lovely, shiny smile. So that's that.
The expert on the clip was relaxed about it. The teeth changed, the gap was gone, the smile got brighter and more uniform. She called it the easy one, the most visible and least contested tweak in the whole timeline. And in isolation, she wasn't wrong. If you're an actress being photographed constantly, closing a tooth gap is about as radical as a haircut. The logic is obvious. The decision is clean. The significance wasn't the procedure itself, it was what it kicked off. Because the teeth didn't just close, they kept evolving. The veneer effect. After the gap closed, a second observation started circulating. In certain photos, Meghan's teeth appeared proportionally larger than her earlier dental profile would suggest. That's one of the more reliable tells for veneers. They're crafted to be brighter, more symmetrical, and more camera-perfect than natural teeth. And when they're newly placed or slightly oversized, the shift is visible to anyone who knows what to look for. A plastic surgeon reviewing her 2005 photos when she was 24 specifically flagged veneers as a likely addition at that point. The shade alone was significant. Beyond the whiteness, the shape and proportional length of the teeth had shifted in a way consistent with cosmetic dental work. There were also observations in the footage of Meghan occasionally touching her lips or teeth in certain appearances, which the commentary flagged as possibly consistent with the adjustment period that comes with newly fitted dental work. That slightly unfamiliar feeling of new surfaces in the mouth that takes a few weeks to normalize. Subtle, methodical, entirely consistent with how the rest of the transformation was being managed. Nothing dramatic, just consistent, quiet movement toward a more polished result. The teeth were about perfecting the close-up. What came next was about the whole frame. The briefcase era. In 2006, 25-year-old Meghan Markle was a briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal, standard early career territory. The show paid, the visibility helped, and the styling was not exactly understated. The contestants stood under studio lights in form-fitting gowns for extended periods, which meant every physical detail was on camera in high definition. During that period, observers started raising questions about breast augmentation. The commentary went beyond the obvious explanation of push-up bra styling. The shape and proportions, they argued, pointed to something more structural. The claim was implants, placed during that window of her career. What made the timeline particularly interesting was what came next. By the time she appeared in Suits a few years later, the figure looked noticeably different. A commentator in the source suggested the implants had been removed, noting that when the work isn't too significant, the reversal is reportedly manageable and leaves minimal visible change. The through line was clear. She adjusted her physical presentation to match whichever role she was trying to book. Deal or No Deal had one set of aesthetic requirements, Suits had another, and she apparently calibrated accordingly, without comment, without acknowledgement, without any of it making it into the coconut oil brand story. That pattern of quiet, strategic recalibration showed up again in the next chapter, and the next, and the one after that. The nose.
Then going down the face, if you look at her nose, 100% she's had a rhinoplasty. So do you guys see that this is wider here and narrower here, and you can see more of the bridge of the nose. It's like more, what's the word right? It's just more defined, the bridge here, where the bridge here, it starts narrow and it goes big like this, and here it's like narrow all the way down.
This was the chapter most people pointed to first, and the plastic surgeon's analysis made it the hardest to dismiss. As a teenager, Meghan's nose had a broader nasal base and some cartilage convexity at the tip, both completely natural features, both entirely her own. By her early 30s, the profile had clearly shifted. The bridge was more consistently narrow from top to bottom. The tip was more streamlined. The base appeared to sit closer to what rhinoplasty surgeons describe as a classic aesthetic standard, aligning with the medial corner of the eye. Her 2012 photos showed signs of both an alaroplasty, which addresses base width, and a nasal tip rhinoplasty, which reshapes the lower lateral cartilages. In his read, those cartilages had been modified through either suturing techniques or partial removal to reduce the convexity and create a narrower, more refined tip. The kind of adjustment measured in millimeters that completely transforms the center of a face. The second source was even more direct. 100% she had a rhinoplasty. The bridge, they pointed out, used to widen as it traveled downward. In the later photos, it stayed narrow all the way. That, they said, doesn't happen on its own. What gave this chapter additional weight was the physical side effect visible in the timeline. By 2013, at 32, the surgeon noted that her philtrum appeared slightly longer than it had been before. That elongation is a documented and common outcome of rhinoplasty, where the nasal tip is manipulated. It's actually a frequent reason why patients come back afterward requesting a lip lift. The nose changes the center of the face, and the distances between features shift in response, which, as it turned out, was exactly what appeared to happen next: the sculpted face. In her earlier career, Meghan had noticeably full cheeks. They gave her face a softness, a warmth, a quality that read as approachable and youthful on screen. And at some point in her 30s, that quality left. The face that emerged was sharper, more angular, more structurally defined in a way that read as sculpted rather than simply aged. The speculation pointed to buccal fat removal, a procedure that removes fat from the cheek pads to create a more contoured, defined look. It became a quietly popular procedure among celebrities through the 2000s, often done subtly enough that observers couldn't place exactly when the change happened. The commentary in the source noted that the shift in Meghan's face tracked consistently with typical buccal fat removal results: less soft volume in the mid-cheek, more visible bone structure, a more editorial overall silhouette. The concern that plastic surgeons consistently raise about this procedure is a long-term one. The fat that gets removed in your 30s for a more contoured look doesn't regenerate. As natural aging reduces facial volume anyway, the effect can tip from defined to hollow later in life. Critics argue it accelerates a process that time was already managing on its own. But here's where this chapter got particularly interesting in Meghan's case. Removing the buccal fat was apparently not the end of the story. She carved it out, and then, almost predictably, had to put volume back. The filler session. Dermal fillers are the standard restoration tool after buccal fat removal, and the commentary around Meghan's later appearances started noting their likely presence. Fillers restore lost volume, enhance cheekbone definition, and keep facial symmetry from shifting as a person ages or after procedures that reduce natural fat. Because they're temporary, they require regular appointments, and because of that upkeep cycle, a face can look subtly different from one public appearance to the next, depending on where the person is in their maintenance schedule. One before and after comparison in the source was pointed to directly. In the earlier photo, that volume in the cheek area wasn't there. In the later photo, it clearly was. The expert pointed to it specifically. Not a lighting difference, not a camera angle difference. A structural placement that hadn't existed before. The tear trough area, the hollow that runs beneath the eye and deepens with age, was also noted as a likely filler site. A minimal amount, the commentator said. Just enough to address the shadow that had appeared. Taken together, the picture was of a face being actively managed. Volume removed for definition. Volume added back for youthfulness. Symmetry maintained through consistent professional appointments. It's a routine that's extremely common in Hollywood at that level. The difference here was the brand story running alongside it, still crediting coconut oil, still selling the effortlessness, still positioning all of it as just her. The lip situation. Meghan's lips, as a young woman, were genuinely well-shaped. Strong Cupid's bow definition, a naturally everted upper lip, philtrum columns that the surgeon specifically noted as a feature you're either born with or not, one that surgery and fillers rarely replicate convincingly. In the later photos, two specific things changed. The distance between the base of the nose and the top of the upper lip got shorter, and more of the pink portion of the upper lip became visible, particularly across the top. Both of those are textbook indicators of a lip lift, a procedure that shortens the philtrum and creates the appearance of a more raised, fuller upper lip. The commentary in the source called it directly a lip lift, possibly some filler added alongside it. What made this chapter particularly precise was the surgeon's observation from her 2008 photos. At 27, her lateral lip eversion was already excellent, meaning the outer portions of her upper lip were naturally positioned the way most lip lift patients hope to end up after surgery. She already had the anatomy most patients were paying to achieve. The central philtrum, however, was what appeared to have been surgically shortened in the years that followed. The net result was a more prominent upper lip, a shorter middle face distance, and a smile that photographed more dramatically than before. All consistent with the procedure, all visible in direct comparison, and all adding to the quiet, cumulative total of a transformation that kept insisting it wasn't happening. The Botox question. When it comes to Botox, different commentators came up with different takes. The first camp made the standard case. Her skin, in certain appearances, looked exceptionally smooth in a way that exceeded what a good skincare routine typically delivers on its own. There were moments where her expressions appeared slightly restricted, particularly around the forehead, which is one of the more consistent visual tells for regular Botox use. The overall youthfulness of her complexion, they argued, pointed to neuromodulators running alongside whatever topical routine she was publicly using. The surgeon came in from a different angle. Reviewing her photos through age 40, he found brow descent progressing at a natural rate, no artificial lateral brow elevation, and skin quality that he attributed to excellent skincare rather than injectables. He pointed out that by 40, many of the celebrities he covered on his channel had already incorporated Botox visibly into their appearance. With Meghan, he wasn't seeing those same signs. He credited sunscreen, consistent cleansing, and the kind of serum-based routine that actually delivers results over time. His read was that her skin at 40 was genuinely well-maintained, in a way consistent with investment, not intervention. So the verdict here was legitimately split. Either she had Botox precise and subtle enough that a trained surgeon couldn't confidently place it, or she was one of the rare Hollywood cases where good genetics and a solid skincare routine held up on their own. Both were plausible. And this was the one area where the natural argument wasn't entirely flattened by the evidence. The brow arc. In the early 2000s, Meghan followed the exact Hollywood playbook for eyebrows. Thin, heavily plucked, barely there. The same trend that reduced nearly every actress of that era to identical comma-shaped arches. Her naturally full teenage brows, well-shaped with a well-placed peak, got taken down significantly during her early career years. It was the aesthetic tax of the moment, and she paid it. Over the following years, the brows came back. Fuller, more defined, better shaped for her bone structure and the overall architecture of her face. The modern version of her brows was significantly more flattering than anything from her early career era, and the transformation tracked the broader industry shift away from the thin brow trend. Some of it was natural regrowth combined with better maintenance choices. Some commentators raised the question of whether Botox also played a role in repositioning the brow arch, since a lifted lateral brow can create the appearance of more volume and openness without any additional hair. Rumors of a brow transplant surfaced at one point, though that one stayed firmly in unverified territory. What wasn't unverified was the visible result. From the aggressively plucked early career arches to the full, polished, elevated brows of her royal and post-royal years, the arc was complete and documented. Whether the mechanism was regrowth, microblading, or something more medical, the outcome was a face that looked significantly more like itself again. The final bill.
Some observers believe her profile appears more defined, particularly in side views.
Forget about that. Look at her chin. Look how wide it is. Wow, that's wide. Compared to the before picture, very narrow, pointier, right? After picture, very wide, square.
However, this remains uncertain. Such changes can easily be achieved through makeup contouring and strategic lighting. As a result, this remains a debated topic with no clear conclusion.
The chin and jawline were the most debated data point in the whole timeline. In earlier photos, her chin read as narrow, pointed, a softer facial endpoint that balanced the rest of her features with a certain delicacy. In side-by-side comparisons from later years, the chin appeared noticeably wider and squarer, a shift that one commentator described with visible surprise while reviewing the footage. Very narrow and pointy before, they said, very wide and square after. That observation landed with some force on audiences comparing the two images. The fair counter-argument was also available. Strategic makeup contouring and lighting can reshape a jawline significantly without any intervention at all. Highlight, shadow, angle. Those tools can widen or narrow a face depending on how they're deployed. This particular feature, more than any other in the timeline, had a reasonable non-surgical explanation that couldn't be fully ruled out. The rhinoplasty, the dental work, the breast augmentation and apparent reversal, the buccal fat removal, the fillers, restoring what the sculpting took away, the lip lift, the brows, rebuilt from a decade of overplucking, the debated Botox, the chin that may or may not have been adjusted, depending on who you asked. Add it all up, and the estimated total for the alleged procedures came in at around $60,000. $60,000. For a woman whose team gave media interviews about coconut oil, whose Netflix show, which the source described as a significant failure, leaned heavily into the natural and authentic positioning, whose entire brand was built on the premise that what you saw was what you got. The gap between the image and the receipts was not subtle, and that, more than any single procedure, was the actual story. But what do you think? Which of these Meghan Markle transformation moments really killed Meghan's whole natural vibe for you? Drop your takes in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed to the Star Report yet, what are you waiting for?